Take your fancy now amongst some truly classic cars.
The Hampshire village of Bewley. To some, it is merely a random cluster of old buildings. To others, English culture. Are these buildings inconvenient, drafty relics with insanely high maintenance costs? Or are they a heritage, representations of an age, tangible evidence of history that can be read like a book? This too is heritage, but to many it is junk. Rusting rubbish that clutters useful space. These old and neglected relics seem impossibly decayed. But these cars are as valuable to those who understand the language of their design as a medieval farmhouse, and just as rich in craftsmanship, history, and meaning. It is late summer, and the lanes around Lord Montagu's stately home at Bewley throb to the rumble of elderly engines.
Blood sign in the back, you can use it as a pad, isn't it? Right, let's hold up there for now.
For 2 days every year, the world's biggest auto jumble is constructed in the fields near the village.
Right then, we want some organisation here now then.
Yeah, grab hold of this. Our problem today stems from the fact that we put the table in flat on the bottom, so we're having to get everything out before we can lay it out on the table. But it's always chaos. You're never going to be any different.
Auto jumbles are an amateur affair. Typically British, eccentric and friendly, yet devoted to just one cause, the preservation of old cars. An Austin Healey leads a two-stroke Saab through the gate.
Car down the bottom car park to the right.
A pre-war Wolseley Hornet and breakfast. John Firth and his friends have brought piles of scrap all the way from Leeds. But everything has a value.
That's half a 1932 James Vann engine. I think there's only about 2 left. No, one of them's without an engine.
It was made idiot-proof, but we're not really idiots.
I did this when I was on the clipper ships at one time.
Okay, factory.
The minute it changes from this and gets professional, it won't be the same. It won't be the same Bewley, you know. Mind you, you do have to be professional these days in what you do, but you've got to have one weekend you have a bit of fun, you know.
On this day, one of our original storeholders, Peter Ward, is having a birthday today, so if you happen to pass by, do wish you many happy returns.
It's 1933 Vauxhall. Humber. Bentley, half a diff.
Oh, I see you are photographing it. Well done.
That's Austin 12. Hey? That's Austin 12, really. It's useless. Worth what it weighs. That's the other half of the Bentley.
"10 o'clock and the public enter. Each one keen to find that special part, buy a complete car, or just learn more about the wreck they are determined to rebuild. The trick is to look uninterested, casual, and if possible, broke. But beneath this carefully cultivated camouflage are the expert restorers who know the value of everything.
You got the other one, haven't you?
I think I've enough bits, I've got to check.
Yeah.
But I think I've enough to make a pair, and then that's 120 quid.
So what's the best you can do then?
40.
40?
Yeah, that's absolutely it.
I'll think about it.
Fair enough. Is it for a 7 or a mog?
Yeah, it's for a 7. But as I say, I bought the other one yesterday for 15
Did you?
quid.
Well, you
that's,
did well.
That's 45 quid. And I got
But,
room as well yesterday.
I don't know, do you want it for a repro Ulster or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what screwed the price of the lamps up. I mean, they were always difficult to find.
I mean, yesterday I got a bracket and a bezel for 15 quid.
Well, you did very well, you know. But I said, you know, if they go back home, they're going to be a complete pair of lamps, and they'll be here next year for 120.
35?
No, £40, that's it.
You haven't got a rim on it.
Not here. It would have been on them, and it wouldn't have, you know, I'd have put it on if I'd have had one here. But I'm sure I got one at home, and I think I can then make a pair up.
What do you think? Do you want it? Make yourself a bargain, doesn't it?
They've always been a difficult one to find, but I mean, obviously with everybody screwing Ulsters together, there's a much bigger demand now.
Go on, I'll do it. Begrudgingly.
It all depends how badly you want it. The same goes for complete, or rather incomplete, cars.
The vehicle's complete. Don't put any oil in yet.
For the first time, Christie's will auction rusty wrecks, rather than fully restored vehicles. Their marquee is a treasure trove of classics that have seen better days. This incomplete 1951 Jaguar XK120 Roadster has a reserve price of £12,000. One of the first Japanese classics to come under the hammer will be this 1967 rotary engine Mazda.
What kind of been up?
Sorry?
What kind of been up? What would have been on the commune? Would have been rotary, would it?
Oh yeah, that's the rotary.
More conventional is Lot 17, a 1934 Wolseley Hornet Special. Everyone is interested to see what Christie's can raise on such unpromising material. One of the first in the catalogue to go under the hammer is a completely decayed Bentley, and not even a rare one at that.
This car, may not entirely believe me, but was driven off the trailer into the marquee. Lot 21, the 47 Bentley Mark 6.
Whoever buys it will probably end up here. This stall has been pitched at Bewley for the last 20 years. Inside these anonymous red boxes are discontinued but essential oil seals.
This one here is a very scruffy looking oil seal. But very valuable. This is an Austin Big 12, heavy 12-4. 1928 to 30. Right? Although they're rusty, you see, it's been around all this time, for years and years, lying in somebody's garage. And they write to me and tell me what they've got, so I have to do a bit. But it's still usable, you see. It's cleaned up. It's not being used on a vehicle. But it's still operational, you see, because the leather inside is perfect. But it's all you can get. So one has to use it. But it's there. And being as these cars really don't do a high mileage, they only go to a show and back, does the job.
Not even an oily fingerprint spoils this rather over-restored Alvis. It's one of 40 or so privately restored cars for sale, not by auction, but by price. How about £35,000 for a rare Italian classic? An Alfa Romeo Giulietta SS. Or memories of a trip to the seaside in a mid-50s Ford Popular. Designed by Alec Isigonis, the man more famous for the Mini, the evergreen Morris Minor, in rarer drop-head form. This is a fake, a kit car based on a mid-30s Duesenberg. An original would be worth more than the total of all the cars on sale here. Well-restored chrome bumper MGBs are now among the most desirable British sports cars. In fact, if it's British sports cars you're looking for, there is nowhere better than Beaulieu to hear the gospel, here preached by John Peters, according to Jaguar, Chapter 1.
The history, the deviations, the cars that are not really correctly restored, or maybe things on a good car, the one or two things that might be just wrong, and to somebody who just not really familiar, it doesn't matter. Something shouts at you and says, "Oh, that's wrong, it shouldn't be like that." It might only be a little thing. It seems silly to anybody else outside, but to the cognoscenti, so to speak, you know, it's wrong, and if it's wrong, that can mean the difference. It could be, well, the difference between somebody will buy it and they won't, and with a rare car, say an XK 120 fixed head, 120, which is a very low production car, isn't it? If you talk about that, I mean, that could be 60,000, 70,000 pound car in mint condition. But if somebody doesn't do that right, well, it could be 10,000 pounds off the price then for something very silly, which might have cost him 500 pounds.
This Jaguar E-Type drophead, restored to jewel-like perfection, is going for 47,000. Real style, for about the same price as a new and anonymous executive saloon. But a classic car need not be ostentatious, or even recognisably a car.
Lot 2. This is the BMW 600. Lot 2. And I have an opening offer of £400 for it, at £400. At £400, this little BMW at £400. Any advance? Yes, 450, 500. Against 250, 600, 50, 700, 750, 800, 850, 900, 50, 1,000, £1,000 beside me, at £1,000 beside me. You're out at the back at £1,000 for £1,000. The bid's beside me. Anybody else want it for £1,000? Selling on my left at 1,000 then. Last time for £1,000. David?
Built in 1957, and probably the rarest car on sale, it's a bargain.
Little like Port Henry, 2.5 years old, blonde, blue top, green shorts. If you don't have a look around, if you can find him, bring him back to Auto Jumble Control, please.
The classic car auto jumble at Beaulieu is really a festival of eccentricity. Even so, some are on the fringes of credibility.
I'm trying to buy a body for my Rolls Royce, and I can't find one. I live in Poland, and I'm trying to restore the car over there. So we just arrived last night. I'm trying to find a body shell, hoping I can find one here. If I don't find it here, I guess I'm dead.
Humphrey Bogart used to own a Rolls Royce, and for a moment...
Well, I took it there because I couldn't afford to restore it anywhere else, and I got deeper and deeper involved in restoring the car, and now I'm at a point where it's so deteriorated I have to find a body shell. I'm hoping I'll find one here.
No, I've got some 10s at home. Yeah. If you want to go to 10s, they'll be 50 quid. Yeah. You might as well.
John Barlow knows Austin Sevens inside out. Confronted with detail like this, he needs to.
Pinion shaft, lock-in washer, and on the main shaft, and then the small lock-in washer where the flange is on the up the end of the pinion shaft.
Not unless you can use either that or that would probably be fairly near.
This is the pinion one, I think. That looks
that's for front camshaft.
Is it? Yeah, well, that one's the size of the small one.
Oh, well, that might do.
And then I need a bigger one over the shaft, which is
one of those two.
It's bigger than those.
Bigger than those two.
Yeah.
After that, you can only go their rear hub ones,
that's
ideally.
Right. Yeah.
So,
well, I'll take that one then.
Right.
And
Okay.
As well.
Right.
The blunt request for a Rolls-Royce body is phasing the stallholders. so Bogart tries for the small parts first.
These are little parts and bits and pieces for post-war Mulliner or James Young or any kind of Rolls crank handle, switch for the hood to make it go up and down, a dome light switch, and catches and.
Right. Now the overcent, I think probably those, a lot of them you get from that chappie in the export centre in London. I'm trying to think of his name and I can't. If you can give me a phone number, because there is a place in London who does a lot of post-war, and also the other people to contact is W.A. Price.
Oh yeah,
because they break quite a few.
I have them right here.
W.A. Price. Yeah, I was going to say they break quite a lot.
Okay.
And you might well find.
How about a body shell? Would you have a body shell?
I haven't got a body shell, no.
Okay,
but
for a cloud.
A cloud. Well, that's a cloud, an ordinary standard steel cloud.
Or a Bentley S1. You know.
Right. Well. Certainly prices would have those.
Okay.
Because they break quite a lot of them.
All right, fine.
I'm certain they would.
For every make, there is an expert. And with advice of the first-time buyer, Classic Car magazine has laid on its club editor, Malcolm Mackay.
I would look first of all at the state of the sills. There's some underseal over here that is flaking off. It may be quite rusty underneath. Again, there's filler in the top of this wing. Look for all the water traps and all the mud traps. Check underneath to make sure that the chassis members are in reasonable condition.
A tatty 1964 Vauxhall Viva might not be everyone's idea of a classic.
It would be a shame if cars like this disappeared completely, because they are part of Britain's motoring heritage. There would be no point in just having all the exotic cars left if we didn't have the standard family cars to compare with them.
A better investment surely is this, the last of the great Rovers, or even an original Mini.
It seems silly to pay £3,500 for an old Mini, doesn't it? But it's very, very nice and very, very original. It all looks as it should be under the bonnet, and all the original features in the interior, which are very nice to see. The original door pulls, the correct seat trim. These early ones were very prone to water leaks into the footwells, and that can rot them out very badly. On the other hand, it's very easy to buy all the necessary panels to repair them, and you can rebuild almost anything nowadays.
Including a 1949 Triumph Roadster that once looked like this one in the auction. But choosing the right wreck to invest in is where the real expertise shows.
Well, this does look a heap, doesn't it? It's Austin Shearline limousine, very nice car in its day, but it's led a very hard life and it's in very poor condition now. This would be almost impossibly expensive to restore. The interior is all leather and it's completely ruined. The dashboard, all the wood has been affected by water and would all have to be completely replaced. A lovely character car, but unbelievably expensive to restore, and body panels will almost certainly be completely unavailable at the moment. A restoration of something like this could only be undertaken by a real enthusiast. If you had it professionally restored, it would probably cost you £30,000 to £40,000, and it would be worth about £5,000 to £10,000.
The key to rebuilds is the ratio of rust to restored value. This is a completely rotten but quite rare 1936 SS Jaguar.
The 1936 SS Jaguar 2.5 litre, lot 40, and I'm going to start this at £11,000. £11,000 is bid. £11,000 the Jaguar. 11,000. Any advance from £11,000? 11,000. Yes, sir. 12,000. 13,000. 14,000. 15,000. 16,000. 17,000. £17,000 against you. That's 17,000. That's £17,000. Any advance on 17,000? That's £17,000. 18,000. One more. 19,000. 20,000. At £20,000 there then. At £20,000. At £20,000 on my right. At £20,000. You're all done. Last time, but 21,000 on the telephone. Against you now at 21 on the telephone. 21,000, 22,000. 22 in the room. at £22,000. You all down for 22. 23,000, she's back. At 23,000. At £23,000 now. Give it one more chance. At 23,000.
Christus were right. Someone else's rust is gold dust.
At £23,000 on the telephone. All at 24,000. £24,000. Hurry up. At £24,000 in the room. Last chance. 24,500. Yes? Is that a bid? 24,500. At 24,500 on the telephone now. Make it around 25. No. Last chance. At 24,500. 24,500. Round it up for me at 25. At £24,500. At £24,500. Absolutely sure? Finished? At £24,500. All done? Thank you. Telephone.
It'll cost 50,000 to restore and probably sell again for 3 times that. At Bewley, most people are passionate about one make of car, and sometimes just one model. Even so, with care and patience, the right parts are here, somewhere. But what is the attraction of taking a box of dismantled bits and halting its decline into scrap?
It's a challenge, I think. It's looking like a mechanical puzzle. And, well, that's something I'm interested in technical things, and, you know, something which I enjoy doing. I suppose you're sort of trying to place yourself in the mentality of the people who thought of the cars or designed them in the first place. Trying to understand, well, why they put things together in the way they did. It's obviously a high-quality vehicle, a sort of poor man's Bentley, I suppose. Which I can identify myself with, I suppose, rather than with a Bentley.
If a pre-war Rover is a poor man's Bentley, what's an old petrol can and a model railway carriage? Toys, that's what. This is mostly a boy's world, a time warp, where lads who have to play at being men or weak can reverse into lost youth. Classic cars have become a massive subculture of enterprise, enthusiasm, and knowledge. And there are bargains still to be had. This, believe it or not, is one. An extremely rare Railton Terraplane, smashed beyond recognition. It was auctioned for £2,200. When restored, it will fill a small but important missing link in the often neglected history of technology.
I think just at once you'd be a little bit worried about it. Because the worst enemy of any paintwork, as you know, is the heat from the sun. That is what oxidizes your paintwork, causes it to fade, otherwise known as a bloom. Take a hot painted surface, cool it down rapidly with cold water. Anybody out there in the trade will tell you you'd expect that to blister, to bubble, to crack, and to start peeling off. Sir, without burning your hands, put your hand onto where I've set light to that, please, and tell me if it's still quite hot, yes?
Well, next week, two brothers from Battersea who cruise the freeways of California in search of classic cars from the 50s. That's next Sunday at the same time, 8 o'clock. And there's a guide to accompany this series. For your copy, please send a cheque or postal order for £3, payable to Channel 4 to Classic Cars, PO Box 4000, London W3 6XJ. Next tonight, Channel 4 makes the touchdown for coverage of the NFL with a brand new season of American football.
We are the sons of the sons of the sons of Michelangelo and Leonardo. Those
pays homage to the 50s and goes in search of automobile heaven and the true home of chrome, California.
The car's not rusty, is it, or dented?
No dents whatsoever. None.
The chrome, like the bumpers and that.
Good.
Yeah.
Very good conditions.
Yeah. A nice 61 Cadillac limousine there. Nice looking car. That'd go down well in England.
The engine runs really good.
Yeah. Nice condition. A lot like this back wing was a little bit wavy on it. Nice looking Hudson. It's absolutely in first class order. I was saying it's quite nice, but sort of a bit, you know. Yeah, I'm really looking for a Roadmaster 2-door hardtop. Listen, I view it. That one looked like it needed plenty of work. What colour is that?
Maroon and pink.
Yeah. And is the paint good on it?
Yeah, it's old, you know. No, it's not good. I mean, if you stand 15 feet away, it looks good.
Shake it all over.
This is the Pomona Swap Meet, a regular open-air market for California's car fraternity. Here in the land of the endless highway, of drive-in everything, the car is still an icon of optimism that nothing can diminish. Stuart and Milton Homan are from Battersea, South London. Their company, Dream Cars, specialises in 50s American automobiles. Every 6 weeks they come to California looking for new stock.
Nice colour, that. It's got a traffic light viewer in it, is it?
Innovations like a traffic light viewer on this 1959 Ford Skyliner are part of the B-movie science fiction appeal of 50s American cars.
Tinted windows. Now these mirrors, they're really rare on these factory fender skirts. Yeah, the sill trim's been screwed on, that's a shame, isn't it? It's a bit iffy.
A peach Skyliner might look neat cruising down the Kings Road, Chelsea, but so might a 1956 Chrysler Imperial.
Is it 55 or 56? It's amazing, it's got like flush door handles. Amazing. Anti-burst doors. Air conditioning, yeah. Look at that, the intakes. Nice. Wire wheels. You had to sell that easily if you got it to England. Prefer them in red. Yeah, but ain't that red with nice? Red interior. Yeah, but it still looks nice like that. Yeah, prefer red. Yeah.
Stuart and Milton have come to Los Angeles with a shopping list of specific cars for specific buyers. Over the years, they have made valuable contacts with Californian dealers and enthusiasts who can make their London customers' dreams come true. For a small fee, Ed Berry thinks he can put the boys in contact with a Mint 53 Cadillac convertible.
So what you need to do is take a look at it and see what's there and see if it really fits. You know, he did the rubber on it, did the paint, did the leather, did the chrome.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is come down and look at it, and maybe tomorrow or Tuesday. Yeah,
well, there's a car out there with your name on it somewhere.
Yeah. Excuse me. Are you selling this?
A 1948 Buick Roadmaster has been on the shopping list for almost a year.
Right. Nearly. Yeah.
Okay, let me... The car is in need of restoration, but is completely rust-free.
Well, that all the chassis number and that's all right on it, isn't it? You know, on the same one that's on the logbook.
Once the famous pink slip is signed, the Roadmaster is on its way back to London.
Don't ever try to tame a wild cat.
We're in quite a lucky position that we're able to earn a living out of it by doing what we enjoy. So you don't, you know, you sort of don't feel as if you're going to work. It was grown out of a hobby of collecting the cars and then being asked more and more, you know, can you get me, you know, particular cars, and it just really grew out of that. Well, we come to California because the condition of cars out here is so good because of the climate. This really is the place where you find the best examples. We've got this for somebody. You know, it's a guy who's got quite a big collection of cars, and he wants to add some 50s American cars to that collection. And the brief that we got was, you know, he gave us a list of a half a dozen cars that he wanted in good, clean, rust-free, running condition, but that needed restoring. There's definitely easier ways of earning a living. I don't know whether there'd be more enjoyable ways of earning a living. You know, you've got to know what you're doing and what you're talking about. You know, I mean, a lot of people, you know, they see the cars that we've got at work and they think, oh yeah, I can, you know, go out to America and, you know, find a car on every street corner and, you know, get them for nothing and bring them back and sell them, you know, sort of for a few £1,000s. I mean, it just doesn't happen like that.
In fact, finding a car that is both in good condition and will sell back in Battersea is more difficult than it might seem. The next day, Milton and Stewart drive 100 miles out to the San Marino Valley to visit Fred Van Horn, who they bought the 48 Buick Roadmaster from at Pomona.
The kisses that I love.
Fred has a collection of cars, including a promising-sounding 1956 Cadillac Coupe de Ville, the perfect car for cruising the King's Road on a balmy summer's evening.
Pretty good shape. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's nothing like it in England, you know. So yeah.
After years of looking at cars, good and bad, Milton and Stewart can tell immediately whether or not the Coupe de Ville is worth shipping home.
No, it's a straight car. The front end chrome is all really straight, and as it came from the factory, so that would be no problem at all to get it re-chromed and looking good. The plastic insert on the badge needs replacing, but you can buy those reproductions, so that would be no problem. It is a nice car. I mean, it's rust-free, which is the main thing that we look for. But then, having said that, yeah, if you saw it going down the road sort of 20 feet away, it would look good. But when you actually get up to and look round it, like, the doors don't really shut that nicely. They're shut, but they're just not clean the way they shut, you know. By the time it's back in England and, you know, we sort of do the work that it needs doing to it, it's just going to make it too expensive to sell to somebody.
As with many 50s American cars, the Coupe de Ville owes its style to one man, Harley Earl. It was Earl who ruled General Motors' colour and styling studio for almost 30 years and single-handedly invented the fins and chrome of the classic 50s American car. Taking his influences from warplanes and Hollywood science fiction, Earl's studio created cars that reflected America's status as the most powerful nation on Earth, and even the universe. 40 years later, Earl's extravagant designs are still in demand. With much of the day spent cruising California's highways searching for cars, in the evenings, Milton and Stewart clock up a massive telephone bill, following up leads from the Los Angeles second-hand magazines.
I've got $800 in just the brakes alone. The whole brake system was redone.
Yeah. What are you asking for that?
Got it in there for $27.50.
This man has another Cadillac, but it's a less saleable four-door, not a two-door coupe.
And the 57 two-door has got a lower roof than a four-door, hasn't it? Like the front windshield is lower, so they just look nicer, you know, with the... If you've got the windows down and, you know, the sort of... As it's cruising along, it looks nicer. I really would rather sort of buy a two-door coupe, but let me give it some thought and I'll have a chat with my brother about it. And what I'll do is, if I'm interested, I'll come and have a look at it. Thanks a lot. All right. Cheers. Bye.
A 57 Cadillac has the instant charisma of a classic car, but in 30 years' time, Milton and Stewart might be cruising LA in search of a Ford Thunderbird like the one they have hired.
You know, these particular Thunderbirds, which are the sort of top-of-the-line super coupe, will certainly become a classic in 20 or 30 years. Obviously, as long as we've still got fossil fuels, we'll all be driving around in them and collecting them, but, you know, no one knows what would happen if we had to go over to using solar power. These would obviously become the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And this is a retractable. Yeah, it looks really nice.
One of the dinosaurs of the late 1950s is the Ford Skyliner retractable. It won't be for sale in the Battersea showroom. This car is for Stewart's personal use. This particular car belonged to a 70-year-old woman who had recently divorced. Its one-owner history and complete service record make it the find of a lifetime.
That's virtually perfect, that. You'd never... If you re-chrome that, I mean, you probably could get it to shine a bit, but it'd never look... And the car just looks so original.
The retractable's roof is a real triumph of available technology over practicality. It utilises no less than 7 reversible electric motors, 23 switches, 9 circuit breakers, and 600 feet of wire.
Baby, baby,
The 59 retractable is my favourite American car. There's something about them. I mean, I know that there's other cars that are sort of better looking cars than a retractable, but it's just the retractable is the one that I like the best out of all of them. You know, I like the style of it. I like the way the top works. Watch it working. I mean, it's a work of art. It isn't a really practical car because, you know, with the top down, the amount of usable boot space you've got is probably smaller than that of a Mini. But that isn't the reason I'm buying it. You know, I'm buying it because I like it so much.
this each time I look into her eyes of blue. Well, now, baby, 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 blue. Yeah, baby, 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 blue.
Frisco's Wednesday night car show is a real slice of American road culture. It's another opportunity for Stewart and Milton to make contacts and get close to the cars they love.
It's been ruined. It's got a lot of coal put in the back of it. Say that. I'm wasting a car. Oh, so that's 16 Palmer. Nice, isn't it? Yeah,
California has the strictest exhaust emission standards in the world. Despite this, the people who live here are still devoted to their gas-guzzling cruisers. A recent survey declared that 40% of American marriages were proposed in cars. Here, the car is not just a means of transport. It is an expression of wealth and sexual intent that has turned into a popular art form. For American car fanatics like Stewart and Milton, this is as close to real happiness as you can get.
You get driving anything from hamburgers, shopping, take all your laundry in and just sit in your car, you know. And they say that America's a country on wheels, and it really is. You know, if you come down this road virtually at any time, day or night, and there's this amount of cars going up and down, you know.
I think the design of cars, especially the 50s cars that we have got the interest in, were obviously designed before the wind tunnel or the computer was a major design factor, you know. It was all young guys out of art college and technical school that designed and put together all the 50s cars. So it was purely a piece of blank paper and whatever the guy thought of that went into the visual appearance of the car, rather than the logic of a computer.
The Buicks in this breaker's yard are a memorial to that age before computers, when car designers' visions of the future were sketched in pencil and sculpted in clay.
Is that the right side?
Yeah.
It's a bonnet bar for a 58 special.
So that'll go back to the geezer that's bought the car.
Yeah, the thing is, if you look at that, you know, it's obviously it's an original piece from 1958, and it's, I mean, the chrome's a little bit dull, but it's, you know, the actual metal is perfect. You know,
it can literally be cleaned.
Yeah.
It won't even need to be re-chromed. It can go straight on the car.
Lamar Wilkins runs Buick Obsolete, a business devoted to the betterment of the Buick. Here on the edges of the Mojave Desert, rust, the grim reaper of metal, is slow to take a hold, and the cars are a gold mine of spare parts.
Might be easier to just get the ratchet on those.
Stewart and Milton are searching for a rear bumper overrider and window winder for the 48 Buick they bought at Pomona. The scene is familiar to any classic car enthusiast. The old and broken giving up vital organs to keep a few alive.
Well, my dad worked for Buick for a while, just at a dealer. I kind of just remember the cars. I'm not old enough to remember these, but I do all the mechanical repair on the older Buicks. I don't know, they're unique. They were always their own car. Even though they were part of General Motors, they still felt like they had to be different. You know, the enclosed drive shaft and keeping their own transmission. And because like Oldsmobile and Cadillac and Pontiac, they all used whatever they could find, you know. And Buick usually always made their own. Got it. The clip that holds those on can really be a pain. A little spring clip. And you can never get them off of there because they don't leave any of it at the end before you get the tool behind it. You're not going to take the transmission out, so what
Like folklore, the mysteries of Buick engineering are handed down by word of mouth. With a $50 reconditioned part, Lamar can cure a leaking Dynaflow transmission.
Now, because see, the reason the U-joint doesn't really wear out in that is because it's in the transmission oil all the time.
Yeah.
Because that'll set right over the top, and then when you bolt it down, it just compresses the rubber right on that.
Coming up to see Lamar in Lancaster is really the only place in the world that a part like this could be got. So it's, you know, it really is priceless to anyone who's got a leaking Buick transmission. It's, you know, this is the part that will fix it.
The actual rubber's bonded to the metal inside.
It's vulcanised, so that is absolutely as factory. So that will go straight back on the car and hopefully cure any leak problems.
And we've probably spent $50 in transmission fluid.
Here it is.
Nice, isn't it?
Yeah, nice.
Lovely colour.
It's a very rare colour.
Three tones of green to the car.
Yeah.
The interior, 3 tones of green here also.
At last, Stuart and Milton make contact with the 53 Cadillac convertible.
And the lenses, the chrome, everything about the car.
Yeah, very nice.
Jesse, is the battery connected to this car right now?
The Caddy will cost between £30,000 and £40,000, but it's exactly what Stuart and Milton's customer is looking for.
Yeah. Being from England, you should know what that is.
Was it Wilton?
Yes.
Yeah.
Didn't come with that.
Nah,
It's kind of an overkill.
Yeah.
But,
So, are all the hydraulics new or they're original?
the backs, original,
yeah.
or they might have been
Yeah.
replaced
No,
through the
but-
years,
yeah, but
but
you haven't
not by me.
replaced them, no.
And they work perfectly. Underneath of this car, it's beautiful. Look at this. This is
Yeah.
all original stuff.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
not replaced. To give
No.
you an idea, the steering wheel,
Yeah, it's original.
which, the actual mileage on the car, I cannot tell you. It shows 15,000 on it. I have no idea what the real mileage is.
Yeah,
That's one owner as far as I'm
Yeah,
concerned.
amazing.
Today it's for sale. Next week,
Yeah,
and not trying to be,
No,
you know,
no, I know.
trying to be real with you.
At a time when the rest of the world was still plunged in post-war gloom, Harley Earle's hatchery of dreamers came up with this unashamed evocation of luxury and optimism. A shrine to Mammon, and without doubt, one of the great American classic cars.
I mean, I would call it a classic American car. I mean, you've only got to look at the front of it to, to look at the chrome of it. It's a 1953 car. It's got power everything. I mean, it's a convertible, and you can fill it with people and go out cruising. And hopefully, if we can work out a deal with the guy who's got it and speak to the guy in England, it'll probably be cruising King's Road in the summer, this car, so you can look out for it there.
3 months later, a massive 59 Buick Electra squeezes its way down the Kings Road, Chelsea in the afternoon gloom.
They do lose a certain amount, obviously with blue skies and palm trees. It looks really good, and the convertibles lend themselves to that sort of climate, you know. Well, I suppose in a way they sort of look out of place driving around the streets of London, but, really, for us, we haven't got any other option.
It's the last Saturday night in February, and the Dream Cars showroom is open late for the Kings Road cruise. The 53 Caddy is back and awaiting an MOT before it's delivered. Looking somewhat out of place in a London midwinter, the extravagant Impalas, Centuries and Belvederes draw an enthusiastic flow of would-be James Deans and Eddie Cochrans.
So no, I haven't got much stuff like this, like the 59 Bonneville's gone now, and obviously the 59 olds went a long time ago, so I think...
For around £7,500, anyone can arrive in style in the Buick Electra.
To do a deal, it makes more sense for us to keep this, but I do obviously want to sell it, but if you get stuck with it and I get stuck with mine, then maybe we can come to some sort of deal. I wouldn't mind even putting some more dots with it. I like it that much. You know what I mean?
The Kings Road cruise is a long way from Whittier Boulevard, Los Angeles, where it all started in the 50s. But if you've got the right set of wheels, the sun will always shine.
Basically, it's a sort of a meeting on the last Saturday of every month in the Kings Road and sort of Chelsea Embankment area of London. And this is about the 16th year that it's been officially going. And obviously it's originated from cruising in America. Driving the car, you imagine that you're cruising down Pacific Coast Highway, California, but obviously originally in America, when cruising first took place, it was the only way of getting out of the house and meeting people. And I suppose that tends to be true as well today. Get a few idiots. Of all the different types, especially people into the 50s era and rock and roll, the biggest single thing you can get to sort of live out that lifestyle is an old American car. So, a lot of people dress in 50s style and go to rock and roll clubs and will also want to actually have a 50s car because it's the sort of ultimate step back in time.
Come on, pretty baby, let's move it and move it. Shake, oh baby, shake, oh baby, please don't lose it. The rhythm that gets into your it's called rock and roll. They say it's gonna die, but honeybee, let's face it. They just don't know what's going to replace it. Ballads and calypsos have got nothing on. Real country music that just drives along.
Channel 4 has produced its own guide to the classic car scene for those who'd like to know more. For your copy, please send a cheque or postal order for Week 3 in the new season of American football. Before that, bodybuilders of a different kind, the red and sexy icons of our time, created by Italians and driven by the fortunate.
The car behind me is a Cisitalia 202 Coupe. It's a car that was built in 1947, and it's the only car, as far as we know, that's been on show, on a permanent exhibition on Art Museum, at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. I think industrial design and car design can be seen as a form of art, because it's a way of expressing ideas and feeling in the search of something beautiful.
The Italian car is a legend and an enigma. A magical alliance between craftwork and technology that has created the ultimate classic. The 1990 Idea Ferrari exhibition in Florence commemorated the death of founder Enzo Ferrari and his celebrated legacy, the unique position Ferrari now occupies in Italian culture. But these cars, indeed all Italian cars, are the product of an historic double act. Manufacturers build the mechanical parts of the car and subcontract the design of the outer shell to bodybuilders or carrozzeria. These wooden formers, or bucks, were carved by bodybuilders Pininfarina. Then metal skins were shaped over them to produce the car bodies that covered Ferrari's mechanical parts. This relationship has its origins in the medieval skills of hand-beating metal plate for armor. It is the key to the shape of Italian cars. Now these cars stand guarded and fussed over, enshrined in specially built glass cubes and displayed as immobile works of art. They are, without doubt, landmarks in the history of car design, and to the Italians as culturally significant as the Renaissance city below. Winner of many famous races, including the Mille Miglia and the Le Mans 24 Hours, this 1949 MM is the earliest car on show. An open-top two-seater, or barchetta, it was beautifully designed by the now-defunct Milanese coach builders, Touring. With its detuned engine and longer chassis, This 166 Inter of 1950 was Ferrari's first attempt to capture the sporting saloon market. Touring's advanced body shape, reminiscent of Pininfarina's earlier Cisitalia, proved that a saloon could also be a taut and lithe form. For the 1959 racing season, Pininfarina designed the shape of Ferrari's 250 Testarossa, or Redhead. These simple flowing shapes look more aerodynamic than they really are. Even when stationary, it has the appearance of a car travelling at 100 miles an hour. The last front-engined racing Ferrari, the 250 GTO, was built from 1962 to 1964. Scaglietti's muscular and aggressive bodywork made it one of their most instantly collectible cars. The early 60s was a period of frantic experiment. The curiously successful combination of curves and straight lines in this 250 Le Mans is the result of genuine wind tunnel aerodynamics and the need to keep such a fast car on the road. Built by Scaglietti and based on a Pininfarina design, this 250 GT is one of the most famous and beautiful of all Ferraris, the definitive gentleman's sports car, and as instantly recognizable as any famous work of art. It is an icon for its time. Its solemn face and egg crate grille pattern, as well as the heavily dished wire wheels, derived from Ferrari's earlier race winners. By now, some details were becoming Ferrari signatures. For Italians, cars, particularly sports cars, are meant to transport the emotions as well as the body. And so those who have succeeded in this enigmatic trick are revered in the same way as Leonardo or Puccini. How did companies like Pininfarina manage to turn mere bodybuilding into art? Head of the design studios at Pininfarina, Lorenzo Ramacciotti.
Since in Italy there were no design school, I attended an engineering school, and then I found the occasion to join Pininfarina. That was, in my eye, the most prominent name in car design. So it's working here is the fulfillment of an ambition, and I think this is true for many people who work here. That is, you don't become a car designer just by chance, but in general because you strongly want it from childhood. This car, for today's standard, doesn't look revolutionary. But if you go back to 1947, this front is very untypical and retains a lot of modern feeling. We have something that's very neat. We only have the lamps and the air intake. And the air intake, instead of being vertical, as usual at the time, is strongly horizontal. It gives a lot of width to the car instead of giving it height. And also the bonnet is much lower than the fenders. So the front appearance of the car is something of wide and low, even if the car is not the big size. On the side, we have a very clean surface. Without being a completely pontoon, there is a small budge for the fenders. The car is very smooth. And there are some specific hints for aerodynamic, like the V-curved windshield. That at the time it was not available a curved screen, and so the screen is split in two parts. And even the handles are of flush type. You just press the button to have the handle and open the door. So there is attention to the proportion, but also to the detail, to obtain a really integrated, smooth and aerodynamic design. Then, slightly more modern, we have another very interesting car. It's the Lancia Aurelia B20. This car is a milestone for Pininfarina, since it marks the passage from the coach builder to the production manufacturer. In fact, only 3,000 cars were built, but all of them were the same, and it was the first start of a series production at Pininfarina. Also relevant for its design, the car is very sporty, though being very comfortable. This, I think, is the very first example of post-war Italian GT car. It's a very performing car with a very elegant and smooth shape. Particularly interesting, the treatment of the side that's completely flush. The low and long shape of the windows, and the curve, very gentle, of the tail, this two-volume, two-box shape. That's also in this case, we don't see any decoration, any ornamentation. It's just the volume, the proportion, and the sculpturing of the details that makes the car.
These Pininfarina designs are essentially studies in body form. The bizarre shape of this Pininfarina X prototype followed innovative research into airflow. And this beautiful, record-breaking 1965 Abarth Coupe Special is a further example of the tireless obsession Italian carrozzeria have with shape and experimentation.
When you are working on a car, you are doing really a sculpture, and you have to work with it to get the best of the surface you are working on. So there is a kind of personal feeling about the car between the designer and the product itself. I think this particular feeling, you can see it in many Italian designs. Coming to Ferraris and Pininfarina, the fact that Pininfarina worked for such a long time with Ferrari gave us the chance to establish a certain design feeling about Ferrari that's very typical to it and very typical of Pininfarina. And in Ferrari cars, you sometimes find very strong design hints that are always related to something functional, like the air intakes on the Testarossa and the 348. These are there because the radiators are mounted on the side instead of being mounted on the front. And at the same time, they are used to define the personality of the car.
Pininfarina is only one of half a dozen Italian coach builders, Ferrari simply one of their most famous clients. But some Italian classics are so obscure that even Italians would not recognize them. The Italians are not the only admirers of the Italian car. Baritone Chris Lackner is an obsessive ESO enthusiast. This 5-litre 1967 ESO Revolta, designed by Bertone, belongs to his Texan girlfriend, Allison. Predominantly designed for the American market, these hybrid cars appealed to those who wanted Italian or European style, with the familiarity of an American engine and automatic gearbox. Having been seduced by the delights of Allison's car, Chris started a 2-year search for an ESO of his own.
Open.
Having found it, he soon discovered that its price bore no relation to its performance.
came to me and he said, I have seen this car. It is absolutely fabulous, and I've got to buy it. And I said, really? And he said, yes, and I don't know where I'm going to get the money. Then he borrowed money from the bank. He borrowed every penny he could and came to me in desperation at the very last. So I said, well, if you really want it that badly and you think it's, you know, a good car and a good price, well, so I loaned him the money, and I guess it took him about 3 years to pay me back.
I knew I had to have it, and you don't come across a 7-litre very often. In fact, it's the only one I'd ever seen at that point, and we only got 2 in this country anyway.
I bought it about 3 years ago. Minus an engine, as you can see. That's where it goes. I had the chance of buying it with or without, and I could only scrape up the money to buy it without. I haven't, I'm afraid, yet got round to doing anything much about it. But I'm looking forward to the day when I can get behind the wheel and see what 96 in first gear feels like. Basically, the car's pretty good. It's in that nice, unrestored, unmucked about with sort of condition. Sometimes I think I take my hobby more seriously than my career. I console myself for the fact that Pavarotti's a keen Maserati enthusiast.
While Chris waits until he can afford to restore his car to its original condition, he can be happy in the knowledge that his ESO is now worth 10 times what he paid for it, even without an engine. Lloyd's of London, the world centre for insurance. Its members gamble with the destiny of ships, planes, space shuttles, and cars. Yet some members take more than a purely professional interest in their work. Lloyd's broker Alex Feisch.
I am a director of Lloyd's Braking Company by the name of Leslie and Godwin. I come and transact or negotiate rates and terms from underwriters on certain classes of business. These days, now I specialize more in fine art insurance, which has latterly, over the last few years, encompassed classic motor cars, because classic motor cars are now, in many circles, termed as a fine art object, rather than just a set of wheels to be driven around the road on. I think I went to my very first motor race meeting, taken by my father, at the age of 9 or 10. And I think that was the recipe for disaster, because from that moment onwards I've always been totally absorbed by the subject. You know where reverse is, don't you?
Just one of the 12 cars in Alex's priceless collection, this Ferrari 365 is almost too valuable to be driven on the road. Ironically, one of the many problems for the serious car collector is the transportation of the very object designed for seductive and fast transport. Existing for purely aesthetic reasons, the striking flying buttresses of this 1977 Maserati Merak SS continue the line of the car. Its distinctive 70s shape was created by Giugiaro at Ital Design.
Each car is different in its own right, it's a different character. And that is the thing with Italian motor cars, that they have a definite charisma. It's just old.
This 1961 Oscar is completely hand-built and very rare. It was designed by the Maserati brothers following their departure from the Maserati company.
They have characters. And, for example, the chap who built it on a Monday, he might put a certain switch to do a certain job in one place, and on a Tuesday he changes his mind and wants to put it somewhere else. So he put it somewhere else. You know where reverse is? Are you going to do it? Okay. Oh, Kevin.
Use reverse.
Gary. What?
Kevin. Use reverse. Which way's reverse? Over against the string?
Right over there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oscar is an example of one of the many eccentric small production companies that existed in Italy during the post-war period.
You had no instruction books to have any sensible meaning of those cars in the early days. Those that you did have an instruction book, they were always for left-hand drive and always in a foreign language. So, I mean, it's a challenge. and they are a challenge to drive, to maintain, and keep them going as they should be. Bizzarini, engineer Giotto Bizzarini, has been involved in the design of many Italian makes of motor car. He was probably the most famous motor car that he designed was the Ferrari 250 GTO at the time that he worked for Ferrari. He also worked for Lamborghini. He designed the first V12 Lamborghini engine, and he then also was responsible for the Iso, Grifo and Revolta chassis, and penultimately he made his own car called a Bizzarini. It's a very interesting car because this car is really a race car adapted to the road rather than road car adapted to the racetrack. If you have a look inside the bonnet, you can see that the weight distribution is virtually makes this a mid-engined, front-engined car, because the engine starts here, nowhere up there, but here, behind the chassis frame. And when you go to the back of the car, the petrol tanks start here. In other words, there's nothing behind there apart from the boot. The sills of the car are also petrol tanks. So all of the weight of the car is really between there and the front axle.
Winner in its class at Le Mans in 1964 and 1965, the Bizzarini Strada, like so many other Italian sports cars, enjoyed a hugely successful racing career. It is the racing heritage of many Italian marques that upholds the myths surrounding the Italian sports car.
Now this is a 1969 Ferrari 365 GTC. You'll see on the front a badge which I'm sure is familiar to most people. The prancing horse was originally the emblem of an Italian family who was one of the sons was a very famous World War I Italian fighter pilot. And he bestowed upon Enzo Ferrari the privilege of being able to use this motto, primarily because at that time Enzo Ferrari ran the Alfa Romeo Works racing team, because there was no such car as a Ferrari in those days. And all Alfa Romeos then carried, the racing ones, that in a shield which said SF below it, which stood for Scuderia Ferrari.
Prancing horses, historic victories and flying aces. This is the stuff of legend, and legends make great stories.
To give you an example of their dedication, as I might put it, to the motor car, up until about 4 or 5 years ago, if you were driving in Italy and you were driving a nice car and it broke down in the middle of the night, there wouldn't be any question if you knocked on the chap's door about, oh, sorry, I'm asleep, come back tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock. He'd be down on the lathe that night, probably trying to make a piece if he couldn't do it, mend the piece he'd already got, and put you back on the road as soon as possible. It wasn't for me he was doing it, it was for the car he was doing it. And that is in their blood. They love the car.
The term classic car is almost indefinable. However, it is in Italy that we come closest to understanding its meaning. These cars have been embraced by Italians at the heart of Italian culture. But ultimately, it is the combined passion of the individual ingegneri and carrozzeria that has made these cars unique. In a time of large corporate takeovers, it is uncertain whether this organic artisan industry will survive. If not, these cars could be some of the last great Italian classics.
For those who'd like to know more about the classic car scene, Channel 4 has produced its own special guide. For your copy, please send a cheque or postal order.
And that follows the driving of a hard bargain in pursuit of those classic cars.
1,292. 9,250. 66,000. Thank you. It's sold at 180,000. Thank you very much, sir. 102. Well done.
7 a.m. A cold winter morning at a Kensington mews. These cars have begun a journey from one owner to another, from one value to another. Principles of ownership and value are at the heart of the classic car market. With a little help, the cars start easily, and many are driven to their destination. Others need alternative means of transport. This 1948 Talbot Lago has had owners in Australia, America and Britain. It was last sold for £24,000 in 1981. Today, its reserve price is £350,000. Raced by the famous driver Louis Chiron, it won the 1949 French Grand Prix. The once triumphant winner is now lifted and hoisted, transported from one owner to another, changing hands and gaining in value. Having always remained in one family, this 1926 Sunbeam Supersports has extensive documentation of a fascinating history. It is new on the market and will attract immense interest because it has no benchmark price. Known as the International, this 1933 1.5-litre Le Mans was the first Aston ever to be entered for the Mille Miglia. A collision, firstly with a stone post and then with a house, resulted in retirement from the race.
Yeah. Okay, Ken.
Of the 77 cars about to be sold, 27 are without reserve. This is perhaps the clearest sign of panic in the marketplace. The truth is that nobody really knows anymore which cars are worth what. That is why today's auction is of crucial importance to the international car market. The managing director of Coys appears confident. Douglas Jameson.
The market is not as strong as it has been. I mean, economically things are bad anyway. We've got some very good cars with some very good reserves. The answer is to Wednesday night will tell. Most of our buyers are in the south or southeast, and there's a lot of Europeans coming over, so I think we should be okay for people. We've done these for several years now, and there's no point in being nervous. It's too late. It's either going to happen or not happen.
Whether it does or doesn't is of great importance to those whose livelihood depends on the buying and selling of classic cars. All of these preparations cost thousands of pounds. It's an investment the auctioneers hope will pay off. Those in the know are surely familiar with the ups and downs of the classic car market. What do dealers look for at an auction? Aston Martin specialist Paul Michaels.
It's always important to go to the big auctions, and Coys hold them about 4 times a year. Last week we had Sotheby's, and that was quite informative and showed an actual first time for quite a long time a rise in the market. If we can get to a point where the market is seen to have bottomed out, I think then people will be less nervous about going back in. The difficulty recently has been that nobody's known where bottom is, so they've been nervous to bring back funds in case they may be 10% over what next week's price is. With a couple of successful auctions establishing a bottom price, and I think the market will move forward in an orderly fashion.
Market movements are dependent on hard sales. With prices in turmoil, it's surprising that people still want to spend money on classic cars. The people about to fill these seats have varied reasons for being here. Auctioneer Peter Bainbridge.
At an event like this, I think it's well spread, truly, between the collector, the investor, and the dealer, from all parts of the globe.
Some people have followed auction trends and will be able to evaluate the ups and downs of the cars in front of them. Some are driven by a passion which has little to do with the market. Others are only looking for bargain basement prices and future profits. Despite the current economic climate, the auctioneer is positive.
I think it would be silly to be outrageously optimistic, but we've got a great selection of cars. We've done a lot of homework prior to the auction, and I think that's going to reflect in the sale this evening.
My lords, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. We've got a selection for you tonight, this evening, an exciting array of cars, many at no reserve. Could all bidders go to the accounts office downstairs after they have been successful in purchasing a car? It is important that we know this evening just what your intentions are with respect to settlement and what your transport requirements might be. Lastly, all cars that are not collected by 5 p.m. tomorrow will be transported to store a car in Newport Pagnell at a cost of £100.
This secret store-a-car location is home to many cars prior to auction. Despite its farmyard appearance, it is in fact an air-conditioned retreat for cars whose relationship with their owners is less than personal. It's a bizarre business. Director of Store-a-Car, Alan Cohen.
A typical client of ours would be a Hollywood film producer or director who may come in here 5 or 6 times a year, and he requires his car at London Airport or at a London hotel. It's our duty to get it there. If he wants it in Aberdeen, we have to get it to Aberdeen. Or we have a client who's got a car in Geneva, we have to fly somebody over to Geneva and pick his car up, or anywhere on the continent. And we do that on a regular basis. But mainly our customers are business people who look at a car for 2 reasons. One is an investment, or perhaps because they want to just look after it and because they think that they one day will drive it on a regular basis.
During the car's stay, their ownership may change. Sold at auction by one investor to another, yet returned by the new owner for indefinite storage. Another fate for some of these cars is repossession by finance houses. A Ferrari stored here cost its owner £1 million in borrowed money. As interest rates rose, he could no longer afford the repayments, and so the finance company reclaimed the car, which the market now values at less than half the purchase price. Storage under these conditions may seem an uneventful and rather humiliating life for a sought-after classic, bought and sold over the telephone unseen and rarely driven. Many are simply entries in a balance ledger. But there are moments of activity for some of them. The Store-a-Car Gold Service is perhaps the final ignominy. It may not have been on the road for several months, but this gull-wing Mercedes has travelled many miles. But for a number of cars here, the only movement will be a return journey on the back of a trailer to and from the auction house.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to start the evening now. We are through on the phones, I hope. Yes, we're through on the phones. We have a 1962 Austin Healey Mark II for you. Good example of the classic British sports car. To start the evening, where are you going to open the bidding, please? No reserve. Let's go for £5,000. 5,000 dreamt the bidding, please. No reserve. It's got to be sold. Let's see. 2,000, not a penny less. Come on now. Thank you. 2,000 a bid. 3,000 anywhere now. Got a bit of 2,000.
But there are people whose reasons for buying a classic car have nothing to do with investment. Factors like looks and appearance do appeal to certain collectors.
I think there are people who buy cars from an aesthetic viewpoint, most certainly. Not the dealer. The dealer, I think, buys for profit, of course. But there are plenty of collectors who I think have an eye for style and design. We're always pleased to see them here.
Got a bit of £6,000. It's £6,000 going to be sold. It's £6,000. Any more bids then? 7,000. Oh, it's an interesting ploy, isn't it? 6, thank you. 7 now, please.
The criteria for buying are varied and diverse.
7 anywhere now. Got a bit of 7. 7, thank you. 7,000.
For me, a classic car is one that at the time it was new, it was very much sought after and perceived to have a new R factor. And then as time goes by, the people who probably couldn't afford it when that was new suddenly start chasing it in its older life.
As well as a very rare Aston Martin Zagato, this collection also includes a DB4, DB5, and this 1970s Opel. It represents more than investment. It represents a passion. This collection was also inspired by a passion. It belongs to an Italian who enjoys driving Porsches, Jaguars and Lancias. But amongst them, the car that really excites is a Fiat 500 Jolly. Managing Director of Pirelli UK, Sandro Veronesi.
It's a very nice car to drive. You can drive 5 people, take 5 people around. I used to take my kids to school with this one. As you can see, it's got some particular features like the mahogany bumpers, mahogany around here, now the steering wheel, rev counter and that sort of things.
For Sandro, it's this car's history that gives it value. It supposedly belonged to Agnelli, head of motor giant Fiat, who used it on his yacht. The story goes that the car is right-hand drive, so he could be next to the pavement when he parked.
I wouldn't bet on it, but it's a nice story. When I buy a car, I like to have time to test the car, to talk to the owners, possibly. I bought them certainly not as an investment, but because I like them. And then as a second priority, I expect when I sell them, if I ever sell them, to make some money.
This car would certainly make some money if sold today. One of the world's most expensive cars, and certainly one of the most beautiful. But the owner is modest about its value. Pink Floyd drummer Nick Mason.
I think the idea of cars for investment, as in with most things for investment, unless you have a passion for it, you're likely to be wasting your time and you're likely to buy things that are really not that good. I mean, some of my cars have become valuable, but if I'd been advising someone else as an investment, I would never have bought those cars. I'd have bought the wrong cars, in fact. Taking, say, perhaps the Ferrari GTO, which is a really good example of a car I have no interest in valuing. I bought the car 12, 15 years ago because I loved it. I lusted after it. I actually have a photograph of that car that I took when I was a student and went to Goodwood to watch club racing in the early 60s. And I took that the picture of the car because I just thought it was the most beautiful car in the world. And it was only when I bought the car sort of 15 years later that I realized that it was the same car because the number plate had changed and so on and so forth. And frankly, I get extremely depressed by the whole business of the car values being touted around. I mean, what's happened, things fortunately are sort of settling down. For about 10 years, I was thought of as an eccentric lunatic. And then for 2 years, I was thought of as a brilliant investor. And now I'm thought of as an eccentric lunatic again because people have talked about the sort of £10 million car. And I think now you can safely say that that's a joke, that people are no longer interested in cars at that sort of money.
Initially bought out of a love of racing, Nick's cars now form part of a successful film and television props hire company. Cars like this 1934 Aston LM18 date back to the days when the British sports car was virtually invincible. This Maserati is known as a birdcage because of its complex, almost wire-like structure, designed to reduce the weight of the car. This D-Type is one of the great racing success stories produced by Jaguar. Its in-house styling could easily be mistaken for the flowing lines of a Pininfarina-designed Ferrari. But a man with so many cars surely has a favorite.
There's no such thing as a perfect car, but what it should have are a number of qualities in varying amounts. It should be beautiful to look at. It should be a wonderful thing to drive. And ideally have history as well. And I think if you can have those three aspects to a car, you're getting somewhere close to my idea of the perfect car.
Of course, some cars are more perfect than others.
This is possibly the worst car in the collection. It's a Trabant. And the reason I've got it is because I get fascinated by a particular item of sort of motoring history, really. And this is quite an important car because it's East European, and it's incredibly badly made, and it's ecologically very unsound, although there is a belief that the car itself may be biodegradable, because there seems to be a lot of, sort of papier-mâché in it.
Whatever the history or qualities of these cars, for Nick Mason there is only one overriding factor.
I like driving the cars, that's why I bought them. It's nice to get pleasure from looking at them as well, but a car at rest is actually not as beautiful as a car in motion.
In some cases, the classic has rather less poetry than motion. This car is being driven by one of the country's leading vintage Bentley dealers, Stanley Mann.
The car on my left here is a 1929 3-litre vintage Bentley with an 8-litre vintage Bentley engine. So there are no parts in it that predate over 1930. The car was built using pure steels. The chassis is made of the best steel that money could buy. The radiator is solid nickel silver, it's not plated. Under the bonnet is an engine built with a slide ruler and a lot of brains and very little in the way of what we would now have as a computer.
The craftsmanship and materials required to make a car of such high quality today would bring with it a price tag of £500,000. This particular car is now valued at twice that. What exactly do you get for your money? A design? The metal? Rarity? The sum of its parts? Or an old leathery smell?
The value of a Bentley is the fun that you get out of it. Money-wise, to find a good Bentley owner, he probably wouldn't tell you what he paid for it, and he's not really that interested in selling it. It's a bit like owning a Spitfire, tremendous fun to fly, but you could fly in a modern jet more comfortably. But to own something like this, the blood boils, everything starts happening. The adventure starts just starting the car up.
Bentleys are the blue chip of classic cars.
If it's fun to drive, somebody else will want to own it as well. So the price will always keep going up. They were expensive when they were made, and they're going to continue being expensive because they're still a practical, usable, fun machine.
These pre-war cars are traditionally known as vintage. Values do not fluctuate as much as cars which have only recently been termed classic. One very special Bentley recently became the focus of a great deal of controversy after it sold for £10 million.
There goes the
Old Number 1 crashed in 1932, killing its driver and causing extensive damage to the car. The judge ruled that the car, despite much restoration, was indeed the original. Vendor, Ed Hubbard.
Old Number 1, undoubtedly the most famous racing Bentley of all time. Famous for her results, and recently famous for a most interesting court case. Having sold the car and made a suitable contract, I received a letter saying that the car was a fake. And of course this caused me to go to court to protect the car's reputation and also to protect my reputation. After 12 days in court, with all the available experts, with the archives from the Bentley Drivers Club, the car was proven legally and officially to be what all enthusiasts, all Bentley enthusiasts know it is. And here she is today, a car with a wonderful history. And when we're talking about the history of a car, we're talking about probably in a car like this, the most important part of the car. We're not talking about just the metal, any more than we're talking about the paint or just the paint and the canvas on a famous painting. We're talking about the history, the continuous history, and that's the value. The metal, relatively unimportant. The history makes this car so very different from other cars.
With such constant modification, authenticating cars is clearly a difficult business.
If the judge had decided this car was not Old Number 1 because of all the changes that have taken place in its racing life, then there would hardly be, and possibly not even be, one original car in the world that had raced. Because I can't imagine even practicing and preparing for your first race without making some basic changes to the car as the way it came out of the factory.
The case of Old Number 1 has had an effect on all classic car collectors.
160, Peter. He wants 160, Peter. 160. Yes or no, Peter?
Provenance is the fine art term, now in common use amongst classic car collectors. It means the history of the car from manufacture through ownership, races, and collections. It is this that gives a car its value, both to individuals and to the market. But for some, the market will always be the only true guide to the value of individual cars. Just as a record-breaking sale of a Van Gogh painting will have a knock-on effect on all Van Goghs, so the sale of a Bentley Continental will have a knock-on effect on all post-war Bentleys. This is why some classic car collectors remain obsessed with the fluctuations in market prices.
199, sir. Yes, sir. 199. It's 199,000, and if further bids this evening, all down at 199 then. Your car, sir, 199, a lovely car.
Having once belonged to Rex Harrison, the new owner of this Bentley S1 Continental has bought some great metal and some fabulous history. It's also a fabulous markup for Coys, who take 10% from both buyer and seller. The Talbot failed to reach its reserve, but later sold for £380,000, making the auctioneers a cool £78,000. The Sunbeam sold for £54,000, 100 times the manufacturer's 1926 list price. With the party over, the investors, collectors and dealers drive home in their modern BMWs and Volvos. Their latest acquisitions await collection and long-term storage. That is, until the next auction.
If you'd like to know more about classic cars, Channel 4 has produced a guide that can be purchased for £3 by cheque or postal order, payable to Channel in half an hour. Now, though, those sometimes disregarded motors from the 50s and 60s are given a new lease of life by enthusiasts to become truly classic cars.
The modern affluent society sort of can have just what it wants. It's got some idea that the old cars, this feeling that the old cars, they say they're not made like they used to be. And I can honestly say that, in all fairness, there's nothing so good as a modern motor car. I mean, some of the old cars were good, they were excellent, they had a charm of their own, but there's nothing like the modern motor car.
Like furniture design and architecture, the shape of the motor car pinpoints its place in history exactly. For many people, owning or restoring a classic car is to possess a time capsule of a bygone era or cherished memory. Amongst the rotting Austins, Cortinas, Anglias and Morrises in Bob Wilkinson's breaker's yard are the cultural cues of Britain's recent history, from the austerity of post-war rationing to the sexual liberation of the 60s. If cars are the archaeological relics of the era they came from, then Bob Wilkinson is the curator of a museum of rust.
Most of these things are preserved in here because they're rare. This is a Humber Pullman, quite a rare one, and several Rover engines. We've just recently supplied one of the blocks of this type to a customer in America. Cylinder block and crankshaft.
Bob is a font of knowledge for any car produced between 1930 and 1975.
It's a type that's been brought in quite recently. It's been lying out of doors for many years, but it's got a type of crankshaft in it that is very prone to breaking. Some particular makes, there's a constant demand for a particular type of part, and we try to preserve those.
These oily, mass-produced parts are gold dust.
Here, this is quite a popular shelf here. We always have people here, the vintage racing people looking for particular parts of our old SU carburetors. These are greatly needed. They look after anything to do with SU carburetors. They're very much in demand. And as you see on the floor, you've gone back the gear wheels. For instance, take a part like this is what they call a lay shaft cluster gear. They're prone to shedding odd teeth if people are very rough. Then we look for the general wear on it. If it's not worn through the case hardening, it's as good as new, a part like this. It would cost a king's ransom to have one made. And therefore, we have to look after all these sort of parts. They're very valuable. This one's from immediate post-war Austin, one of the A40 Devon or Somerset types. Very popular car in its day.
The popular cars of yesterday become the popular classics of today, lovingly preserved in drafty garages in almost every corner of suburban Britain. For the last 5 years, Dave Marson's evenings and weekends have been devoted to restoring this Mark II Cortina 1600E to the condition it was in when it left the Ford factory at Dagenham in 1970. The Mark II Cortinas were an important turning point for Ford in Britain. The car was the first model to shake off the American design influences imposed by the parent company.
Put your foot down and demand performance.
You'll get it in Ford Cortina. Still another way.
The 1600E was pitched at a market segment of young, sporty executives with families.
It was a car that was putting a niche in the market, if you like, between the Lotus Cortina and the GT. It's sort of a cross between the two, whereas you got quite a fast car in the Lotus Cortina. It was a harsh ride and there was no creature comforts really. And your GT was sort of a lower market again, so they pitched this in between, sort of at an executive market, if you like, with a bit of plush trim and whatever, sports wheels, but with the Lotus suspension. So you got a nice sporty sort of ride without the hassle of a Lotus engine, which tended to be a bit of a problem, and it was quite successful. When I first started motoring, you bought a car, a second-hand car. First thing you did was change the wheels. You put a flash set of wheels on it because you only ever got standard wheels in those days. You'd put spotlights on, reversing lights, wing mirrors and all this sort of stuff. When the 1600E came out, it already got it all. You know, so to me, there was everything in that car that I needed, that I wanted. It was quick, it got good road holding, and it looked very nice on the road. So that was it for me.
Dave's years of work have produced a car worth far more than its market value. But money hasn't got a great deal to do with it. Dave is happy in the knowledge that he owns one of the best 1600Es in existence and a shelf full of concourse competition trophies.
A concourse car is as, but no better than, it left the factory. This is as spot on as you're ever going to get one of these, I think. Absolutely everything has got to be as Ford would have done it. You could have walked into a showroom 20 years ago and bought a car exactly like this one. Except it took me 5 years, where it probably takes Ford a couple of hours to build it.
This is the Ford Anglia 105E. It was designed by a British team, but overseen by the American Elwood Engel. This amazing launch film, directed by Joseph Losey, kick-started massive sales of the car. In 1991, they're building them again, by hand. Once the supply of vital panels has dried up, it's companies like Classic Components of Keighley, Yorkshire, that must save the day. Here, 9 skilled men made redundant from Britain's declining engineering industries help to keep parts of our motoring heritage alive. This is an Anglia's back valance panel. After appeals from its members, the Owners Club has ordered a batch of 25. Classic Components Managing Director, Jeff Coates.
We take the flat sheet and put it in the press tool and give it the first pressing, which does put some shape into it. We've got to take the edges off. It usually wrinkles round the edges. We've got to trim the edges off, which leaves you with something like that. We've got to work it by hand, fold the edges over, trim it off, cut the holes in, and we end up with a finished panel, which is more or less the same as the original. It was a matter of minutes in the factory down at Dagenham to press one of these. It takes us maybe from start to finish, including the tooling time, about an hour to make one.
At an average speed of almost 84 miles per hour, Jim Clark in a Cortina wins outright and takes a first in class.
Jeff Coates also specialises in restoring one of the instant classics of the 1960s, the Mark I Lotus Cortina.
We've got to cut out all the bad panels on the car. They've usually been welded up quite a lot in the past to get them through an MOT. We've got to cut all the rust and rot out of them. This has been done down this side. Everything's cut back to the good metal, and the panels are cut to fit and butt welded in and ground off, and you get as original as you possibly can.
For Bob Wilkinson, parts that are as good as new are good enough.
To get people that come and spend several days in looking round. They they're in. They get great deal of pleasure from rooting around and having a good look at the remains of the old cars.
Rooting around the rusty remains and congealed oil of a scrapyard is one of the escapist pleasures of the classic car buff. Somewhere amongst this lot, where the great rivals of the motor industry lie side by side in silent decay, are the missing links to hundreds of weekend restoration projects that will bring the past alive.
Oh yes, this is an interesting old car. It was an Armstrong Siddeley Sapphire. They were they were not very numerous, but they were a car that sort of vied with the Jaguar in the day, a copy of the Jag in some respects, and it's in the present moment being dismantled by some chaps from London who are going to come down and finish and take the engine and the gearbox and the back axle off it. They've already been and taken quite a few valuable bits off it. And it is now waiting. It is paid for. It's just waiting for them to come. I'm looking after its custodian. They come and take it when they can.
The people that we sell parts to, it's people that owned the cars quite a few years ago and they would like to run one again. I think there's a lot of nostalgia involved in it.
Today's cars are designed by a computer. The manufacturers now put all the information into a computer and the computer tells them what to make. Whereas years ago, a little guy with a pencil would draw on his piece of paper and that's what they would make. More personal, more of a personal design, if you like. Which I think would go down well today, probably, with a lot of motoring public. To throw the computer out the window and give a guy a pencil and a piece of paper and say, there you are, now draw me a car.
I saw one at a car show and I just thought, wow, that's beautiful. I thought it was actually American, first of all, and then I looked closer and saw that it wasn't. It's quite a bit smaller than an American car, but on its own it looks very big, and it was just the style. I just like I quite like the 40s car style rather than big fins and chrome. I mean, some of the later 50s cars are so over the top, it's ridiculous. But I like the sort of style, flowing lines.
For 20-year-old Rachel Crease, the 50s present a more attractive decade in which to exist than the 1990s. Her Vauxhall Wyvern is a vital part of a total 1950s lifestyle package. The Wyvern E-Series, launched at the Earl's Court Motor Show in 1951, was a departure from the more staid post-war utility of the Vauxhall L-Series.
The E-Series was completely different. It was a completely different body shell. They introduced monocoque construction. I think it was around the era of the E-Series. The body style was just completely different. Here, the E-Series was very smooth and lower slung than the L-Series. The L-Series was very sit up and beg like a Pop or a Ford Pilot. When they introduced the E-Series, it was quite a big thing at Earl's Court in 1951 at the motor show. They did drawings of the stand, and the E-Series had a side-lifting bonnet, which was quite unusual. You could open the bonnet either side or completely take it off, so it made easy access to the engine compartment, and it shows the dash and the seats inside, how many people you could fit in, the luggage space, engines, and it had independent front suspension. It was quite an impressive model for when it was made. Well, the car was influenced by the Americans, by a lot of the American late 40s cars, such as Plymouth or Chevys. Especially in 1948 Chevy, they have the same bar grille and the bull-nosed bonnet and sort of that American style.
I'm going on a rocket ship to the moon. I hope that you will come and see me soon. I'm going far, far away.
Rachel belongs to a community of young people in love with the 50s, most of whom weren't born until the 1970s. Theirs is an idealised view of post-war Britain, where in reality the only glamour to be found was in American movies and music. Flo McEwen's band, the Jive Cats, write and play 50s rockabilly music. It's the perfect soundtrack to the fashion, the lifestyle, and the cars.
This is a Singer Gazelle. This particular one is a Series 3A. It was produced in 1959. I call her Maybelline. They had a number of different series and they've all slightly changed. This particular one is a twin carb, and as I said, it was made in 1959. They built them the Series 3A right up to 1961, and then continued with the Series B and the Series C. They're all very similar, but they actually stopped production, I believe, in the mid-60s. Gets you noticed. I certainly get let out of junctions quite well in this car. No problems there. If I break down, everybody rushes to help me. You try doing that in a modern car.
Flo's Singer Gazelle was produced by the Roots Group, a forgotten British motor manufacturer consumed by the multinational Chrysler Corporation in the 60s.
You can imagine the British cars with very dull, dark colours. This one is obviously much more pastel coloured, more American, summer, sunshine, the whole effect.
Rocket ship to the moon. I hope that you will come and see me soon. I hope that you will come and see me soon.
The late 50s spawned a whole era of wannabe American cars, imitating the flashy cruisers that populated the imported films and television programs of the time. Soon, many of the cars on Britain's roads reflected this invasion of American culture.
The new Zephyr.
This Mark II Ford Zephyr is a perfect time capsule of the period. Motoring journalist Liz Turner.
It's a family car, but what it's about is optimism and looking forward to a bright new technological future. Cars are always a barometer of the mood of the times, and after the war the Americans had a huge boom. Their cars got incredibly long, 20-foot long, covered in chrome. They're the most amazing technicolours. In Britain we took a long time to recover, so our cars stayed a bit smaller and a bit duller for a while. But this car came out in 1958, and by that time skirts were full, people wore hats, rationing was finishing, and people wanted a brighter, sharper car. So the cars very much follow the American styling. They've got plenty of chrome all over them that you can polish on a Sunday, two-tone upholstery. They offered a bit of luxury for the first time in a very long time.
In the 50s, a new car was a rare sight. Even so, up to 1962, Ford sold over 220,000 Mark II Zephyrs. One of the Zephyr's rivals was the Vauxhall Cresta PA. Like the Ford, the Crestas owed more to Detroit than Dagenham or Luton.
The Vauxhall cars were known for their very lively colour schemes. You could get all sorts of things like leather or elastofab, PVC, in pink and burgundy, or tartan if you wanted it. This is a little more sedate, subdued. It's vinyl on the dash and leather on the seat in two-tone. They've got this terrific 50s styling with the sharp points and the fins and the chrome. They're fun to have, particularly for the young people who like the 50s music and who dress in the 50s styles. It's nice to arrive in a car that actually matches your style. I mean, if you look like James Dean and get out of a Nissan Micra, it doesn't have the same effect at all. You're both sitting on the same seat. You can drive along with your arm around the one you love. I remember doing that when I was younger. The boyfriend, I was changing gear and he was steering. I think it was a sexier age. You could cuddle up in the cars, and in America there's always that idea of going to a drive-in movie. But I think we may have an idealised view of the 50s. I don't think it was actually like that for young people at the time. But I think it was an exciting time, and I think there are a lot of things to look forward to in the 50s.
Now, here it is. The new Ford Capri.
One of the things to look forward to in the 50s was the swinging 60s.
Be our guest.
The Ford Capri, launched in 1969 with its hedonistic marketing campaign, was the last of the American clones, taking its fastback coupe styling from the Ford Mustang.
A fantastic-looking fastback with room for four at a price you can afford.
A lot of people have owned Fords, and a lot of people have owned Ford Capris. In fact, the majority of people who speak to say, yes, I've had one of those. I've put one through a hedge.
Go ahead. Dream some more. The new Ford Capri is very generous with its room and comfort.
The whole concept of the car is very glamorous, and that's what appeals to people. Now, it's an affordable glamour car, because if you couldn't afford all that performance, you opted for a 1.3 or a 1.6, so you had a very economical sports car. If you could afford the top of the range, which was this 3000E, then you went for the 3 litre, and you had all the extras and options, so you could really build a car that you wanted.
You can choose from 5 engines. Turn Capri into a top-of-the-line GT that can go from 0 to 100 in 11 seconds. You can have all the GT accessories, manual or automatic transmission. The works.
And that concept went right through to the Mark III. So you could either buy a 4-cylinder, which would be the laser, or you could opt for the V6 2.8 injection. So you've got an affordable classic car. But the shape is still there, whether it's a 1969 or a 1987 Capri.
With the 152 different model variants that Ford provided, the Capri offers an endless restoration treasure hunt for exactly the right parts and trim. This is John Hill's graveyard of Capris, kept solely for reference purposes.
The appeal is the challenge. You've got a challenge. It's a giant jigsaw puzzle. Each piece has to be put in logically, and each piece has to be restored. And there's pieces missing, and there's pieces that are wrong, and it can go together in the wrong order, so you have to undo it. It's a grown-up jigsaw. It's a giant Meccano set for somebody to put together, and it tests all your skills. You've got the bodywork skill, you've got spraying, you've got to be an electrician, you've got to be a mechanic, you've got to be a trimmer. You've got to learn all these skills, and if you've got these skills, you're testing them to the full to rebuild that car. It's more difficult to rebuild a car than it would be to assemble a car from brand new parts.
Strangely enough, it is these cars, the ordinary family runabouts, mass-produced before traffic became a problem, that are now some of the most collectible classic cars.
As I ride around the premises, I see the odds and ends of ideas that I was going to do, and now I've realised that I shan't have time to do what I wanted to. But I don't know. I'm going to try, and I hope that I'll live long enough to clear it up and tidy the loose ends up, and leave all the valuable items in the other premises which you've seen, where they can be sold or disposed of by members of my family. And it would be a shame to throw everything out for scrap after I've spent so many years looking after it and saving it.
Next Sunday at 8, in the last programme of the series, collectors can find out which of today's motoring classics would be worth shrink-wrapping for posterity.
Don't leave me halfway to paradise, so near, yet so far away. Whoa, 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 so near, yet so far away.
There's a chance Channel 4 guide to the classic car scene, and for a copy, send a cheque or postal order for £3 payable to Channel 4 to Classic Cars, P.O. Box 4000.
Now, the last programme in the series speculates which of the cars on the road today will become tomorrow's classics.
Cars are made from iron, steel, aluminium, plastic and rubber. These days, this apparently indestructible assembly is coated in a cocktail of protective chemicals, sealed against the weather and painted. And yet, left in the open, a modern car can be scrap in less than 20 years, and most cars are beyond economical restoration after a mere 10. Shrink wrapping is a packaging technique where special plastic that shrinks when heated is used to cocoon and preserve a manufactured product. So what if a brand new car was shrink wrapped and stored in a dark, dry, cool place for a quarter of a century? This unused time capsule would probably be an instant classic merely by surviving. But which cars would be worth storing this way? Are there future classics under our very noses in the streets today that should be bought now and kept forever? We asked some people who ought to know. We asked them which cars they would choose as their shrink-wrapped classic. The 1990 Alfa Romeo SZ is not a handsome car, but it has character. Even today, it is a limited edition £50,000 rarity. But is it a future classic? Actor, engineer and Alfa Romeo fan James Castle thinks it is.
Well, the reason I chose this car was that it's basically so ugly. I mean, I think it's very pretty, but then I quite like ugly cars. I think ugly cars are pretty. And I mean, it also restores one's faith in Alfa Romeo as a major contributor to the car as a cultural icon, because they have created, by using a carbon fibre impregnated resin body, they haven't been compromised by the previous shapes that were made from steel cars. So basically, this is a plastic car. These huge gaps here, all over it, are actually as much a part of it as narrow gaps on an early Jaguar would be, for instance. If you look at the front, this is absolutely pure de Havilland tiger moth. Look at that shape. That is absolutely lovely. And these lights, I mean, they're the sort of lights you'd see in an art gallery. I mean, who would want to buy a car that actually looks like a football boot? And it does. These slab sides, that's where you put your foot in. There's your ankle going up there. If you feel the roof, it actually feels nice. It's quite strange. There's not many cars you can actually touch and have a kind of tactile experience with. You come round here to this aerofoil. I mean, this is a pure Boeing 707. It is actually an aerofoil. It's actually like a flap, in fact. Everywhere you go, I mean, I actually want to feel this car. There's this strange plastic. You know, I'm quite surprised I can pick this up like this. The petrol filler cap, and there's this nice little flap here to stop you damaging the paint. I'm quite surprised it's not locked. certainly at home in Brixton, I think you'd need to put a sort of little lock there, probably. It's a dancing car as well. You can feel the road. It dances. You feel like you have, through the wheel, you have a relationship with it. It's got a wonderful kind of crackling, stinging exhaust, which is just around about the time you got the most torque. So with the help of sound, I mean, drivers need it. It's a driver's car. The interior is something else. The interior is absolutely full of unnecessary carbon fibre. There's a panel in here on the dashboard. There's no reason for it to be there, I suppose, except that it just reminds you that you're in a sort of new tech car. This car would look terrific. It would look so terrific in my street at home in Brixton. It's the sort of car people, and it would be perfectly safe. People would love it. People wouldn't want to scratch a car like this. They would. Well, if they did, look at this. What is this car? Hey, this is yours. I want to shake you by the hand, they'd say. They want to shake you by the hand. Give me a ride. Give me the keys, probably. No, get off. And there's a car around there, which is actually this. I suspect Alpha's nicked the idea. There's this guy who's got it's a Sierra, a Ford Sierra, and it's got tons of stuff on it. It's red. It's got all the bits added on, and he's called the Chemist. And it seems to me that Alphas have been studying the Chemist.
London's Design Museum has put renewed emphasis on the car as a cultural barometer. They don't keep many, but one that has been stored is this unlikely delivery van. It was designed at Nissan's new Pike factory in Japan as a limited edition pun on the French 2CV, or tin snail. It is the choice of non-driver and Financial Times correspondent Alice Rawsthorne.
Well, I think the Japanese see the West in the same way as we see the 19th century. So if you buy a Victorian piece of furniture, you buy it and then pluck it out of context and twist the imagery around and just use it for your own purposes. And I think the Japanese use Western imagery in much the same way. So they're fascinated by the signs and symbols of the West, but have no real interest in the sort of depth and detail of it. And so this van is built with this sort of notion of 1940s French design. It's built for the same sort of purpose that Citroën originally intended the de Chevaux to be used. And yet it's essentially a very Japanese animal. It's blended lots of sort of West Coast design images with sort of French forms and functions. And so what Nissan did was take the idea, this notion of French cars from the 40s and 50s, in this case the de Chevaux van, and they recreated it for contemporary Japan. So the Escargot is really their version of the de Chevaux. So it's taken some of the visual elements, some of the shape. It's taken the basic idea of a functional van. They've really turned it into this sort of throwaway toy. Lots of the visual ideas seem to me to be very Californian, very West Coast. So whilst in some ways this car's rather sort of frog-like, it's sort of Kermit-like rather than French frog, so it's like, you know, sort of Muppet Hollywood notions. And also to me, I mean, it's like Mickey Mouse. We've got these great big mouse eyes, and here are these little mouse ears, which are the wing mirrors. So that gives it the sort of American West Coast sort of beach baby look to the design. The reason I chose it as a classic is because this, to me, says a lot about Japanese notions of design and consumption today. There's such a sort of surfeit of everything in Japanese society that even a car, which we tend to see as this sort of very pious, practical, reverential object, they'll take one, they'll spray it with graffiti, or they'll cover it with sort of flowers and funky shapes. So really they're just turning it into some sort of accessory. I mean, at the moment these are all over the streets of Tokyo. In a year's time there probably won't be any left because another fad will have come along. So the Japanese will have just chucked them away. Lots of elements come together to make a classic. I think really it's wholeness. Something's got to be intact. It's got to have a totality to it. And also it has to be redolent with meaning in some way. It has to embody its time. And so when it's shrink-wrapped and opened up in 25 years' time, people will look at it and it'll shriek out about its particular age. To a certain extent, it's got to be an object that will look completely out of place in any other environment, whether it's another era or even a different country or culture.
25 years from now, this sort of thing will probably be seen as sheer insanity. This is an Audi Quattro at full song. 500 brake horsepower, wafer-thin body, and more acceleration than a fighter jet. But for design consultant Stephen Bailey, there is more to the four-wheel drive Quattro than raw power.
The Audi Quattro was the first practical, mass-produced car with intelligent four-wheel drive. It set dynamic standards, which still, 10 years on, have not yet been equalled. And significantly for the Audi company, it was a technological event. It was the first of a whole series of technical events which Ferdinand Piëch called for from his Audi engineers. Another aspect which makes it a classic is, of course, its styling. It based on the shell of the original Audi Coupe, a fine car in its day, but a little anonymous. And an English designer called Martin Smith, who works for Audi's EDM studio in Munich, created a brand new gesture in the repertoire of automobile aesthetics. He created these huge, squared-off, flared wheel arches. Now, since then, there isn't a manufacturer on Earth which hasn't imitated them. It has about it a magnificent look of refined menace. I think success in motorsport is partly, by definition, a requirement of a car being a classic. The Audi Quattro had such prodigious dynamic ability that it totally dominated international rallying at the beginning of the 80s. And still, at the beginning of the 90s, imitations of the Quattro are still the cars which dominate the rallying scene. Ferdinand Piëch, the engineer responsible, he said, driving an ordinary car is like sailing, but a Quattro is like skiing.
Inside this disused chocolate warehouse on the outskirts of Birmingham lies one of Britain's strangest collections of cars. Nearly all unused, some are rare, some are not. They represent a carefully selected cross-section of factory-fresh products. Alexander Patrick owns every one of them. He's a tough businessman with a soft spot for popular cars like the Ford Capri.
We felt that so many people had memories. This is the car, 1987 model, this one. We code everything by registration number here. That car was the last model called a 280. The very last one was actually stolen and taken to bits and sadly no longer exists.
The Capri was built from the same components as another all-time classic, the Ford Cortina.
Now the Cortina, that's a car, let me see. Yes, it's over here. That's a car that a lot of people will have memories of, and we put it into the Patrick collection because we felt that Grandad, when he brings the children along, will be able to say, well, I used to rep in one of these. This is the gear version, of course, in production something like 20 years, and everybody really started probably their repping life in a Cortina. I mean, the other manufacturers weren't competing in the same degree.
Anyone who owns a Cortina in mint condition already has an appreciating asset. This 10-year-old car has become an icon of British commercial life like no other product. Yet few will survive.
The 1982 Ford Cortina, more than ever, a car above comparison.
Rather than shrink-wrapping his collection, Alexander Patrick makes sure all his cars are kept in running order. But will this ever be a classic?
What I suppose has always been thought as a joke car, but actually is now beginning to be taken rather more seriously. And so it's interesting how attitudes change about vehicles and so on.
Skoda is one of Europe's oldest manufacturing companies.
In 1983, 171,408 cars were made at Mladá Boleslav.
This car, a stalwart of communist, no-nonsense Czechoslovak engineering, will probably become a classic in its own right. Skoda is the only original communist car able to list Western European markets in its sales films.
Great Britain, Denmark, France, the Federal Republic of Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium and Finland.
The popular motor cars, which are made in their hundreds of thousands, tend to be the ones that nobody cares or thinks about. And yet they're the ones that most people can associate with. And this is the important factor. If people can associate with something, then when they come around the Patrick collection, for instance, they can say, oh, I'd love a Ferrari GTO, that's my dream motor car. But I do remember this, and I remember we went off on a holiday and it broke down on Porlock Hill or whatever. And it's got lots of happy memories. So it's a nostalgic trip as well as something which is just talking about exotica.
Unlike Alice Rawsthorne's zany escargot, the Japanese cars here are startling for their ordinariness.
I'm not going to show it to you now, but of course we've got a Triumph Acclaim, which was the first Anglo-Japanese product. But we also have the Charade. This is the little three-cylinder car. Beautifully prepared, lovely engine, well made and manufactured, and entirely reliable. So that's a small family motor car, which the Japanese are so good at making. And then, of course, we go through from that to the Mazda RX-7. Now, you probably remember that NSU pioneered the rotary engine. But now I think the only manufacturer that actually fits a rotary engine is Mazda. And they've kept true to it. Now, this is one of their early sports models. And the RX-7, there is a new version of it now, but this is the previous version. This one's been turbocharged. A very nice, very pleasant motor car to drive, and an illustration of how the Japanese are moving on. And I think my favourite in the Japanese sports cars was the little original MR2. I mean, the latest one is smashing, but tends to look a little bit like a lot of other sports cars. The original MR2 was what I felt took the mantle of the MG Midget, the British sports car, and was the first really successful Japanese sports car.
If ever there was an instant classic sports car, it was the 1961 E-Type Jaguar.
This sleek, bullet-shaped car, related closely to the famous record-breaking D-Type, is way out on its own. A new thoroughbred, descended from a long line of champions, it sets the pace for tomorrow.
But tomorrow was to be a disaster for Jaguar. With the rise of fast German sports saloon cars and poor workmanship at home, Jaguar's fortunes declined.
For dispatch. Now ready for its lucky owner, it will be delivered within a day or so.
Today's Jaguars have survived not as state-of-the-art Eurobox Autobahn burners, but according to design critic Jonathan Glancy, as collectible examples of Englishness.
If you were to wrap this up, I think when you uncovered it in 25 or 50 years' time, you would find one of the great all-time classics of English design. There's no way you can mistake this car for being a German car, an American car, a Japanese car. It has a very particular character. When Jaguar try sales clinics and they remove all the badges off the cars, there's no doubt in people's minds that's what it is. They don't have to say which is the Jaguar when they're looking at a mix of Japanese and German and American cars. Everybody says, well, oh, this is the Jaguar. Well, why do they say that? Because it has this very distinctive line that looks like no other car. So when you unwrapped it, you would say, look, first of all, the lovely surprise, a Jaguar. And more than that, an English car. And I think of machines like the Spitfire when I drive this car. I think of British railway locomotives, Gresley Pacifics, Stanier Pacifics, and so on. It has that kind of association of quality engineering. They were beautifully tamed with immense power. In other words, the lovely lines they had, these lovely curved lines, unadorned, simple, calm, hid the fact that they were quite brutish, powerful machines. And the Spitfire, a terribly powerful machine of death. And that's not a very nice thing, but it looked poetic. A Gresley Pacific at the head of a railway train right up into the early 1960s. Again, poetry in motion. The same with the Jaguar. You have that poetry, and it's a very English poetry. It's a poetry of Wordsworth and Coleridge. It's not difficult German or Nordic or Japanese poetry. I think it's the English poetry in motion. German machines, for instance, have these very aerodynamic shapes, so they have very high backs. Back of the car comes right up, which gives it a cheese wedge or ski slope look. And that's actually very disturbing when you see these things on the road. They're bulky. German cars look like fast trucks. A Jaguar, on the other hand, is a very low, calm-looking car. It's discreet, and I think discretion is a very important thing. It's part of what we celebrate about our Englishness.
Neither English nor a romantic, Jackie Stewart has developed some of the world's best racing cars. As a consultant to Ford, He helped improve the extraordinary RS200 Group B rally car, killed at birth by a change in the rules. Stewart worked on a variety of prototypes throughout 1985. Shortly after this, Ford were left with 150 hand-built, unraceable cars for sale. For product designer Sebastian Conran, the final version of this car became a classic the moment he saw it.
It was designed to win a class of rallying called Group B, which is sort of supercar rallying, really. But it ended because going 160 miles an hour through forest was really not on. The styling I find very interesting. It's very purposeful, I suppose, is the best way of describing it. I mean, the radiator here, which cools the compressed air that drives the turbo, and the outlet here, and it's sort of very sort of frog-like animal looks. It's almost, if you look at it, you think of those sort of dung beetles in the desert or something like that. It has a scarab quality to it. It's also, I mean, if you want to fill it up with petrol at the petrol station, you've got to do this to get at the petrol cap down here. It has a great deal of presence as you'll stand there and fill up with petrol. It was styled at the time when the Sierra came out, which introduced new styling on the scene, and it was not popular because of its styling. It replaced the boxy Cortina. It has the Ford vernacular of styling. It sort of reminds on a bit of a James Bond fantasy car designed for going underwater and exploring the bottom of the ocean with. And these great bug eyes, you know, it's very reminiscent of the styling of these subaquatic machinery. It's what the French would describe as joli laid, I suppose, you know, sort of ugly beauty to it. I can't think of very many other cars which are designed to be racing cars, but yet are road legal and very drivable and perfectly user-friendly and comfortable. I mean, you can drive this car all day and get out and feel fine. I mean, and yet it's a racing car. When they did fly through the air, as they have to, they flew straight rather than sort of back up, and so they didn't land on their noses. They landed with all four wheels at the same time. Get out! And it is made out of plastic. And in 25 years' time, I mean, people will find making cars out of steel a bit of a joke. Usually one talks about classic cars as cars that have done particularly well in racing, or they've sold particularly well, or they were the most expensive car of their time. And I suppose this has sort of been stillborn, and, you know, it was drummed up to be the most wonderful car that was ever going to be, and there it was, but, you know, it was born redundant, like a lot of people are, I suppose.
The world motor industry produces about 35 million cars a year. Of these, a few 100,000 will survive, and of them, a handful might be kept as classics. This is a typical central London car park. Future classics lie scattered in the gloom, quietly rotting away. To save them means taking positive action, because, like us all, no matter how familiar or plentiful, cars die slowly, imperceptibly, until nothing remains but the memory.
Channel 4's guide to classic cars is available by sending a cheque or postal order for £3, payable to Channel 4 to Classic Cars, PO Box 4000, London W3 6XJ. Well, last year, Canadians said goodbye to one of the longest train journeys in the world. The 6,000-mile Trans-Canada Railroad travelled with Murray Sail on the last train to Medicine Hat